Carried away, yes.
Public body has a quorum of 9.
Yes. A quorum or a membership?
Membership.
Okay.
And they define that as more than half, and they get into a public meeting situation, and someone challenges them that they're holding a meeting and there's only 4 of them there. They don't have a quorum. Is that a meeting?
Not for purposes of the open meetings law. A quorum, by the way, that is a term that has existed in a state statute, largely unchanged since 1909. If you're really interested in taking notes, it's section 41 of the General Construction Law. General Construction Law doesn't deal with building buildings, it deals with how laws are to be construed. And it is said forever that a quorum is a majority of the total membership of whatever the group might be, notwithstanding absences or vacancies. So if your board consists of 9 and there are 4 present, you have no quorum. The open meetings law is not triggered until you have a gathering of a quorum, a majority of the total membership, for the purpose of conducting public business. And in fact, it's a good segue to really the key question that arose on day 1 of the open meetings law in 1977. What is a meeting? What is a meeting? And at the time, the contention was, well, we're just going to get together to talk, we're not going to take any action, we're not going to vote, this isn't a meeting. It's a workshop, it's a work session, it's a study session, it's everything but a meeting. The issue went to court, reached the state's highest court, the Court of Appeals, and the City of Newburgh City Council contended that its work sessions held solely for the purpose of discussion were not meetings, and that the open meetings law didn't apply. The Court of Appeals unanimously disagreed. And since then, it's 1978, so this should not be news to anybody. A meeting is, again, a gathering of a quorum for the purpose of conducting public business, even if there is no intent to take action, regardless of what the gathering is characterized as. So you should assume that if a majority gets together, yes, the open meetings law applies. But there are issues that come up all the time. Just as an example, let's say that there were 3 people in this room from the same town board, 3 out of 5, a majority. What do you think? Would that be a meeting of the town board? Would the open meetings law apply? No. Nobody would walk in and say, looks like, smells like, tastes like a meeting of the town board of the town of Sullivan. The 3 members would simply be 3 within a larger audience. They would not have gathered for the purpose of conducting business collectively as a body. By the way, the provision dealing with quorum requirements was altered, now it's about 10 years ago. And it deals with the technology, if you will. Years ago, the Committee on Open Government prepares a report to the governor and the legislature every year, and about 20 years ago, at a committee meeting, the discussion involved the use of technology. Should public bodies have the ability to conduct meetings by telephone conference call, by video conference? What should we do? Well, one of the members was on a city council at the time, and he was a little cute. He said, wouldn't it be great if I could participate in meetings by telephone from my living room? Number 1, I wouldn't have to face my constituents. Number 2, nobody would see who's whispering in my ear. Sort of a critical point. Why? Because the open meetings law contains a statement of intent which says that the public has the right to attend, to listen, and to observe the performance of public officials. Obviously, if somebody's participating by phone, that person cannot be observed. For that reason, we offered a recommendation which actually became law about 10 years later. And it authorizes public bodies to conduct meetings by means of physical presence of quorum or by means of video conferencing, whereby people in 2 locations can all observe one another.
So what do you think if the same body is out in a diner?
A diner. What are they doing? Are they just eating? Are they socializing?
How do I know?
Are they talking about the
They're all
Yankees and the Red
hanging.
Sox? What are they doing? Huh?
I don't know.
That's the issue, isn't it? That's the issue, and actually, you're bringing up an issue that comes up in a variety of ways all the time. Memorial Day is coming up, somebody's gonna have a barbecue, right? Backyard barbecue, invite a lot of friends, and all of a sudden, there are 4 town board members standing over there in the corner. And they've stopped talking about the baseball games, they've started to talk about, who knows what, the budget. That's one of the rules of human nature, it just happens. My hope is that there is always somebody who is sufficiently knowledgeable and vigilant to say, wait a minute, this is beginning to look like and taste like and smell like a meeting. Let's stop this discussion. Let's continue it within the confines of the open meetings law. Realistically, it happens. It happens. My hope is that it doesn't happen terribly frequently. Let's put it that way. The law says that every meeting of a public body has to be preceded by notice. The notice requirement merely involves the time and place of a meeting. If you want to include more in your notice, that's fine. Lots of boards also include their agendas. There's no obligation to do so, but again, lots of boards do it because it makes sense. The notice requirements are pretty simple. We have a dividing line between meetings scheduled at least a week in advance as opposed to those scheduled less than a week in advance. In the case of the former, the law says that notice must be given at least 72 hours prior to the meeting, to the news media, to the public by means of posting, and now, based upon an amendment that was enacted last year, if you have a website, on your website as well. Again, at least 72 hours prior to the meeting. If a meeting is scheduled less than a week in advance, same requirements, notice to the news media, notice given by means of posting, notice on the website if you have the opportunity to do so. The law says, to the extent practicable at a reasonable time prior to the meeting. So there's nothing that forbids a public body from getting together quickly if it must, but it has to give the notice nonetheless. There was actually a Court of Appeals case which dealt with, in a way, the privacy relative to deceased individuals. Completely different. It was a case brought by the New York Times in relation to the 911, the tapes of 911 calls made by people who were trapped in the Trade Center. And one of the arguments was, well, these people are dead, there's no privacy consideration any longer. And in general, that has been the holding of federal courts in relation to the Federal Freedom of Information Act. It's not what the Court of Appeals determined. The Court of Appeals found that in a situation like that, where there may be expressions of emotion, intimate information about an individual, that there are privacy considerations relative to surviving family members. And for that reason, the Court of Appeals held that those tapes could be withheld as an unwarranted invasion of personal privacy. Before that case, I would get calls about suicide notes. Happens every once in a while. If the note says, I killed myself because the world is a terrible place, I think it's public. Nothing intimate, nothing personal about that. But if the note says, I killed myself because my mother never loved me, a little bit different. Then you get into intimate kinds of personal information. In the context of your question, if we're talking about records that are at least 100 years old, I don't see that an agency could demonstrate to a court's satisfaction that disclosure would result in an unwarranted invasion of anybody's privacy. And under FOIL, even when you have the ability to withhold, you don't have the obligation to withhold. There's a section of FOIL that says that the home address of a public officer or employee does not have to be disclosed under that law. City of Buffalo School District wanted to disclose the home addresses of all of its teachers. The union went to court, lost. The appellate division said, it's true, school district, you may withhold the addresses of those public employees, but there is no requirement that you